We're going to Mars.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm pretty excited because I've been wanting to have this conversation for a long time. We have Dr. Malki from UTRGV, currently teaching economics and entrepreneurship, which I love both of those subjects. And we're going to have an interesting conversation about new technology and about something that's going on in our community that I think could be impactful. Thank you, Dr. Malki, for being here. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'll start right off the bat, okay? Because I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while. When I first met you, you said you were involved in the impact studies for SpaceX.
Yes.
And you also mentioned you were also involved in the impact studies for LNG.
Yes.
Okay. So now both things are now about to become a reality. We had a lot of delay, I guess, because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I think we lost a company or two of the LNG that were projected to come. I think there was 4 or 3.
I think there were originally 5.
5. I think we lost 2.
2, yes.
Yes, and 1 now has started ramping up. As I mentioned to you before, we started this, where Beyond Media offices at eBridge, they are now starting to train LNG employees on a daily basis. And they're going in there and getting hired. And yesterday I went to the island. And on the way, I could already tell where they are. They were there last night when I came. The light was on, so they're already working 24/7. So I wanted to hear a little bit about that because obviously it's something that's going to impact our city and all our surrounding county, Cameron County. So let's start with what did you learn, or what could we expect as both of these things combined, SpaceX and LNG?
Well, there is not really too many things that they have in common where you will have some type of synergies other than the economic impact.
Yes.
Each one would have.
I think the main thing is the drag on employees, like skilled employees that we would have because we don't have that many.
Yes, yeah. So they will, they will have a very big impact. Sometimes not in terms of the number of jobs that will be created. I'm talking here about the LNG because it's highly specialized and it's so it's not like a refinery. This is one of the misconceptions that people had, at the beginning when these projects were announced. People were thinking that it's going to be a refinery and it's going to be very polluting and an eyesore and stuff. And those are not like that, those projects. They're more of a giant, freezers. So they're going to bring, natural gas and freeze it. And the process of freezing it.
It's more of a logistics project.
Yes, but it's also, they're going to transform, the gas from a gas form to liquid form.
Right.
And the process, you shrink it by a factor of 600. And it becomes stable and easy, to transport. So it removes, the risk of flammability, when you compress it and you liquefy it. The impact it would have, in terms of jobs will be relatively small, but the impact in terms of the tax revenue that they will generate will be significant. Actually, when I worked on the economic impact of one of the 3 projects, Texas LNG, initially it was going to be about $3 billion project, which is significant.
Right. Especially for our area.
Yes. I mean, we have had a number of different, good projects that came in, but not in that scale, in terms of the size of the investment. But the number of jobs are going to be relatively small compared to SpaceX. What you would expect, let's say, when you're talking about $3 billion
right.
Investment. But in terms of the tax impact, the revenue that it will generate for the surrounding communities once, the abatements, that they have been offered, are through, then...
Yeah, the impact that the taxes will have would benefit all of us, I would imagine.
Well, just to give you an idea about how big, the impact would be. When we did the analysis that the tax impact Texas LNG would be bigger than the tax impact of the 10 biggest taxpayers that we have combined. So one company will dwarf
All of them.
by a large margin the top 10 that we had at the time when we did the analysis.
This is not property taxes, though. This is franchise tax?
It's all kind of taxes, that they will generate. There are franchise taxes, there is, school districts and...
So I don't know which company is here now, which is the one that's starting, but what I do know is, or what the numbers they've been throwing around is 5,000 temporary jobs that start to build the stuff, I would imagine.
Yes.
Right? And then I don't know what they ended up, but there is a number like 350 or 400 permanent jobs, something in that range, I think. I don't know. I don't know if those numbers are correct, but that's the 5,000 I think is pretty accurate from what they've talked about.
Yes. So the initial impact during the construction phase, which is temporary, like you said, they tend to be very big because they do hire a lot of people from different industries to build a facility like that. But once it's operational, that impact, will fade, will be phased out, the construction impact, because it's temporary. As long as, you're doing the construction, you have activity going on. Once the building has been, and the facility has been built, then you cannot keep paying, the construction workers unless they're working. Then you have the operational impact. That's the long lasting. That's,
And that operational impact, I think, also spreads throughout the port, right? It's not just them, because I would imagine that the port also now has to probably level up what they do to be able to maintain this.
When we do economic impact analysis, you look at the linkages, because it's not just how many jobs, this project will hire. It's also all the industries that are linked to these electricians and suppliers and, all these ancillaries that are attached to it. And when you have a project of that magnitude, it tends to attract other businesses that are connected to it because they want to be close to the, to that anchor. If, for example, if you you look at the auto industry, when during its heydays, in the Detroit area and, the Midwest, the northern part of the Midwest, Michigan,
all the middle,
Illinois, part of Ohio and western Pennsylvania, northwestern Pennsylvania. If you were to take a compass and draw a circle, you can capture most of the suppliers to that auto industry. So you have, the main car makers, Ford, Chrysler, and GM, but you also have, the tire makers, the glass makers, the part makers. Back then, they conglomerated, around, that main suppliers. Those you don't need to go and hire them, individually.
Right. They all complement.
Yes. So when you bring a project like that, those other businesses that support, the activities of the main project will come here.
Right.
So that's another type of impact that we capture. So you capture what we call a direct impact, which is directly connected to the project, and then the indirect are all these suppliers, all these trade services that are being provided, whether it's electricians and all kind of technicians. They don't work directly for the
subcontract or
yes, but they will. The LNG will subcontract for certain services with all these people. But then you also have a third round of activity that most people don't pay attention to, and it's called induced impact. And an induced impact is when you have economic activity from the project. So people are earning an income.
Right.
Okay. So they have some money to spend. And you also have the indirect, the suppliers and all these people that are providing services. They also have additional income. They will go and spend this money in the community. So you will see an increase in activity at supermarkets, at the movie theaters, at the stores and so on that are not connected in any way.
I think we can clearly see that in Brownsville now with SpaceX, right? SpaceX has a lot of employees.
Yeah.
We can clearly see that a bunch of them are brought in from out of town, and they are creating that type of impact now.
Yes.
Right? They're spending their money and they're hanging out. We see them.
Yes.
So they're more restaurants, more bars, more. You can see the construction that's happening just because of that.
Yes.
and we have a big need for hotels, big need for more infrastructure because of the impact that they're having. They said right now, I think they're either the largest now employer or second largest in the county.
Yeah.
And they've been here. I mean, they've been here for a long time, but really like ramped up right before the pandemic, I think.
Yes.
So you said there's a $3 billion investment, right?
That's
that was
just one of
calculated
them.
for one of the LNGs. How does that compare to SpaceX? What is SpaceX investment?
I don't recall the numbers, but I think it was a little less than that. But the impact is a little different.
Yeah, well, obviously employees, right? Because they
Yes.
have a bunch of employees.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the externalities that you would have with projects like that, especially with SpaceX, is the visibility
Right.
that it brings, because that's an externality that usually you don't model when you do these economic impacts.
The tourism is crazy.
Yeah.
Every time we've gone, it's crazy. And the last time I met a hotel owner, and he was telling me he owns a bunch of hotels here, but he owns a bunch of hotels at the island.
Yeah.
And he was telling me how many billionaires were staying on his property just to come see the launch.
Yeah.
Because so the impact it's having is huge.
But it's also an impact on other businesses. When they see a company like SpaceX locating, to
Right.
Brownsville, that initially they have heard very little,
Yeah.
if anything about it. And then they realize, okay, what's going on there? What's so special about this place? So, the curiosity effect, will generate, some, people to start looking at,
It's an advertising
yeah,
billboard.
so it's kind of a free advertising.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
it's
have a
not really
rocket.
free, but
We have a rocket standing there,
yes,
which is crazy.
yeah. But a company like SpaceX,
Right.
right.
It's a big company.
Yeah.
It's recognized all over the world, right?
So
this
it
guy is the
validates-
richest guy in the world. Is hanging out here.
Yeah.
It obviously draws a lot of attention.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so then during the pandemic, I did meet a couple of companies. I worked for one company that moved here because they move LNG on in the ocean, right?
Yes.
So he's a logistics trader, and he was telling me two things. One is that our port was not deep enough, which is one of the things that the port had promised, so that these companies could come, right? So for these big ships to be able to come in and upload the LNG. And then two, which I found interesting, was one day on a boat for this LNG is $500,000 of transport time. So they need to get it from here to wherever it's going as fast as possible, which was they were bleeding during the pandemic because they would stop them in the middle of the ocean and they would say, you can't move because, you could be infected, whatever, you might have somebody with COVID. So they were spending $500,000 every day. And so when you look at those numbers, like the impact that this company or the amount of money that is moved with this energy,
Yes.
right? It's part of the Russia thing, right?
Yes.
Right now, it's LNG, right? So from here, I mean, I don't know if you covered this, but where would we transport this LNG to? Where does it go from Brownsville?
Well, I mean, they have. I mean, the project that I've worked on, they looked at different markets, mostly Europe because of what's going on, in
Right.
But there's also Asia, Africa, parts of Africa, not all of it, but mostly, Europe.
Is there other ports like this right now in the United States that are doing this?
I'm not aware of any
No?
port. I'm sure there is something. I'm just not aware of.
Like designated, LNG,
Yeah.
like transport. Because that seems like everybody, and I asked you that question because everybody talks about it like we're going to supply the world. And I'm like, well, there's probably a bunch of these somewhere
Well,
in the
I
country.
don't think there will be a bunch of them, because you have to be close to the critical source, which is natural gas. You're not going to extract the gas from, Texas,
Right.
and then truck it all the way to, or use a pipeline
Or,
all
yeah.
the way to New York, to ship it from the port
Right,
of New York.
right.
So you have to be close to.
So are we, and I know the answer to this, but we're in the proximity of a lot of natural gas, right?
Yeah.
Both us and Tamaulipas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, both sides of the border. Yeah.
Yeah, there's these crazy amounts. So I think that's the goal,
Yes.
of this, right? I know that refined gasoline and stuff has pipelines from here all the way to Monterey or something like that, and I imagine that it's going to be very similar both ways on natural gas. No, I
Yes,
don't know.
yes. Well, the natural gas, they already, I think they installed the pipelines that will bring the natural gas, to the port.
And okay, so now let's go to impact. So when you do an impact study, do you cover what the impact would be on our community? Like growth or population or any kind of metrics that we can look at?
Yes, but usually impacts like that. I mean, we look at the unemployment level and so
Yes.
on to see if you are going to have some stress on the labor market. So I've worked on a different project in Louisiana. That's much bigger, $65 billion project.
Okay.
That was going to create 35,000 jobs. So when you look at 35,000 new jobs,
Right.
these are permanent jobs. These are not really just the construction. It was going to be a conglomerate of a group of oil and gas companies that came together, and the lead was the South African company Sasol that took the lead, and they had a lot of partners, big oil companies. They were building a petrochemical facility in southwest Louisiana, and they looked at a $65 billion project that will create 35,000 jobs. So 35,000 jobs is a
it's
whole
crazy.
city.
Yes.
I mean, when you look at the city of 100,000 people,
Right.
Okay.
We're 150, let's say, more or less.
I think Brownsville is about closer to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have each job is supporting a family on average, let's say of 4 people, a husband, wife, and 2 kids, then you multiply 35,000 jobs by 4 to see how many people will be supported by that. So you're looking at a huge influx of labor coming from other communities. So then when you have a project of that nature, then you look at other factors. You look at the population increase, you look at the services that will need to be provided, new schools, new police stations, fire departments, and so on. So it's much bigger. The projects that we are talking about, I mean, the LNG and SpaceX, they will not generate that type of impact in terms of the number of jobs that will require redesigning the city. And
well, I'll tell you where it causes a lot of strain that I've noticed is construction, right?
Yes.
We don't have enough houses. And so, yes, in a big city, 35,000 is a big impact. In our city, 200 people coming in from out of town creates havoc.
Yes,
right?
Well, the city that I'm talking about, in
it's also
Louisiana,
small.
is about 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So there's no way.
That's adding another. Yeah.
So we looked at a number of parishes around where the project is going to be, because that's where all this labor is going to come. And over time, they're not going to be traveling,
right,
from as far as Baton Rouge to come work right on the border with Texas.
Right.
So they need to relocate. So you need to redesign a new city, roads, and all that stuff. For us, it does put, strain on the resources that we have and stuff. And the leadership has to start thinking about, planning, this growth, because this is not just a one-time growth, because it will attract even more growth. So if we are proactive and start, planning this stuff ahead of time, where you need to know where you're going to put, these companies, where the new housing are going to be, the infrastructure, to support them, whether it's schools and so on, that would help, if it's done, beforehand, But for, the LNG project, but especially, SpaceX,
right,
you can already see, the pressures, on the resources, because there's a lot more people coming.
Yeah.
And with good purchasing power, because these jobs are good paying jobs. So they have the purchasing power.
The amount of Teslas in my neighborhood has gone up by a lot since the pandemic. Since these guys showed up, there's a lot of Teslas now everywhere. Yeah. And they're in, like I was saying, look, in the county, and these are rough numbers, but in the county, at any given time, there's about 300 houses available for sale.
Yeah.
In the city, there's about 150 in a month. Okay. Yeah. Okay. SpaceX makes these decisions. Like, I think recently they're like, we're going to add 1,000 people.
Yeah.
These 1,000 people aren't coming from here because they don't have the skill set, right? Yeah. So they bring in 1,000 people. this is what they were doing for a while. They were flying them in on a daily basis and flying them out on planes. Like just coming to the airport, flying them in, go to work right before the launch that just happened because they needed to make this happen. They were flying them in from Austin, I think, every day.
That's not sustainable. Cannot do that, you know.
Of course, they're going to bring them and leave them here.
Yeah.
This is the R&D department, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Right? This is where they're testing this rocket. This rocket has the support of NASA because it's the one they want to go to the moon. Right? It's the one they're going to test on the moon the next. And then obviously he wants to go to Mars and wants to do all this crazy stuff. But they have to make this moon thing happen because that's the grant. That's a $30 billion grant or something that SpaceX got.
Yeah.
Right? And this is the R&D location for that. So they have to make it happen.
Yes.
So the growth and it's just crazy. They'll spend crazy amount of, I know friends of mine that sell food or whatever, just the impact on them is just like sometimes it's $100,000 worth of food a month.
Yeah.
Just because you have to feed the people. I mean, you know where it is, right? But if you're not from here, it's about 30 minutes away from the city. So there's nowhere to eat. There's nowhere to so everything has taken to them, right? So the impact already, I think, on the community has been, I think, positive, except for the housing strain. Because I do notice that rents are higher, right? And apartments are hard to find now, right, for people. And I know it's because my parents have apartments, and it's very easy to rent apartments right now. Yeah, because there's not enough. So, and that's probably going to be the case for a little while construction catches up, right? And obviously, we're in the middle of this interest rate hike, so it's harder or more costly to build anything right now because of the interest rate. And so, I don't know how long it's going to take us to catch up, but our growth spurt should be 5 years. 6 years, I think, from when you did the impact study on SpaceX, do they have a foreseeable future, like the next 10 years, the next 20 years? What do they have a number of employees that they want to target or hit, or was there any of that talk?
Well, it's just like any other project. You know, you start, you know, once the project, you know, is built, you know, the facilities are built, and you start to hire. I mean, you will hire gradually until you reach, you know, your the level where you are fully operational. I don't remember exactly, you know, the number of years, but it's not really a 10-year, you know,
much
gradual.
quicker.
It's a lot quicker, you know, within maybe 2 years.
I had heard another doctor. I think he's doctor of engineering. I think you were there, but I don't know if you were. I think we were having a dinner with some of the Swiss guys that you brought.
Yeah.
And he had said, and this is what I remember anyway. We were at dinner. We were at a restaurant. He said that having LNG and SpaceX together does build the conditions, and nearshoring, right, at the same time, does build the conditions for Brownsville to grow in manufacturing now, where we hadn't had those conditions before. I think he said something like that. I don't know if you recall that because we were all talking different stuff, but that also stuck in my head, right? That we didn't have the conditions or the infrastructure commercially or industrially to do this. And now because we have these, we might. Is that a good assessment?
Well, I don't think these projects, you know, will
I think it was because of the level of the workforce.
Yes, I mean, it will attract the workforce, but there is also efforts, you know, to upgrade, you know, the infrastructure, especially the energy.
Right.
Here, because a lot of these industries that we are attracting, actually very attractive industries, tend to be relatively energy intensive.
Yes.
So you need to have the capacity and the capabilities, you know, to deliver, you know, the level of energy that they need, you know, to operate.
Yeah, we noticed they wired everything brand new from Brownsville to SpaceX. Yeah. Like all the wiring is brand new. One time we looked at it because it was so quick. They did it really quick. And then the other time, I do a lot of parties and stuff for SpaceX. And one time I asked them, I wanted to connect something. And we were at the restaurant, which is further away. And I was like, do we have enough electricity so I can connect stuff? And they were like, we have the biggest solar grid in the area.
Yeah.
And he goes, we have more power than everybody.
Yeah, I mean, projects like this, will attract also all kind of, like, I wouldn't say emerging technology
Right.
because they have been around for quite some time, especially renewable energy, even though we are,
Yeah.
oil-rich state. We are still one of the leading states in terms of renewable
Well, you can
energy.
see wind everywhere here in our area, right?
And we have plenty of space,
Right.
so you can't put solar farms everywhere, especially, in West Texas, because it's...
Yeah, so I think that's what. But okay, so overall, like I said, I think it's going to be positive for us.
Yes.
But I don't know. Education wise, now you as a professor, right, with a professor hat, how do we develop the workforce that is going to be needed as this growth continues? Right? Do we obviously don't have this workforce, correct?
We have some. We don't have everything. We don't have all the skills. And university, I mean, not speaking, for the university, but my experience working with some colleagues, especially Dr. James Lee, who's involved in a lot of these, community-related type of projects, but from the university side. So we look at the skills that will be needed, and jointly with these companies that are coming here, we look at the type of skills that they need, the type of programs and certificates or degrees that they will require of their workforce, and we are putting, curriculum together, to meet those needs. We're also working with different agencies, in the lower Rio Grande Valley. I mean, one of them is COSTEP.
Okay.
They focus mostly on workforce development.
Trades, like more trades, or?
Well, all kind of workforce development. I mean, because we want, and their mission is basically to help provide, the workforce that will be needed, for these jobs that are
right,
already here, but also for future companies that we're looking to target. Because, I've worked with Dr. Lee, and we have looked at different ideas. So we have an idea about which direction we need, to go, and what we need to focus on, so we have a, very proactive,
well, Brownsville is a city. I'll
Yes.
tell you as what I know. Brownsville as a city is obvious. They're ramping up the targeting and marketing to aerospace companies, right? They are making a big push. It's going to happen in about a year. They're preparing this. I know because of, like I said, I'm on some of the boards, but one of the pushes is going to be for the aerospace industry. They did one round at the beginning where they gave a bunch of money out to these companies. It didn't work out too well, I don't think. Like, they didn't last here for a long time. But the idea is that, right? The idea is that we're going to target the idea or concept that the city has is that based on SpaceX, we can develop an industry in the aerospace. But my problem with that is, who's going to work there, right? Like, well, how do we develop those kids, right?
Well, I don't think that's an issue, because unlike a lot of other factors, labor is a factor.
Right.
So you have, energy is a factor of production. You have labor. You have all kind of inputs. Labor is a mobile, factor. So if the jobs are here and they pay well, people will move here with those skill with that
skill set.
Yeah, but we will still need to develop our own here. So we may be able to attract initially people that are willing to relocate here, especially if something is happening, very quickly and short term, and let's say, an industry is moving here, next year, and it takes 4 years, let's say, to train, the engineers, homegrown engineers. So they are not going to be ready in 1 year.
Right.
So it's going to take time. But we can still, meet the demand,
Importing.
while we're,
Importing people.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we have a clear idea, the direction we're going, so if we're targeting aerospace, type of industries, to come here, we can start preparing, that
well, I think that's so I think we're very attractive to the state. It seems like the state really likes us. They spend a lot of money on us, both negative and positive. Obviously, with the border, right? You can tell on the news. We're on the news every day because of whatever, all kinds of problems with the border. But they're spending a lot of money on it, right? I don't know if you know this, but all the hotels in McAllen and here, like 70% of them are booked by agents.
Yes.
Because they're spending all this money on the border, right?
Yes.
And that's economy also driven, right? I mean, it helps our economy because all these people are here. But the reason I think we're very liked is because we're young, right? Our demographic is young. Our I think we have the most kids probably in the state per capita. We're very young, and we're going to be the needed workforce to get to Texas. I think, the people that it needs, because I hear this over and over in all the states and now around the world, right? People are getting old, right? And you need young people, and we've got a bunch of them, which is why I think we're very attractive, right? Because we're also Mexican, so we reproduce. So we're gonna have more.
Well, I don't think that has anything to do with.
I think it
Mexican.
does. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Just
No,
kidding.
I don't think it has,
But it does, because we are very conservative and we reproduce, right? Like we have more than one kid usually in our culture. So
But it's changing.
Yes, but we have a young demographic compared to the rest
we do
of the
have
state. And so, but I do think, like you said, I think that's an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage that we can't teach these kids fast enough to take advantage of these new emerging technologies and industries.
Here is why, projects like LNG and SpaceX and other projects that came, to the Valley are very good for the region, especially with the young population. Because if you don't have projects like this and people that oppose, let's say the LNG projects that will generate so much taxes, especially for the school districts, you have, like you said, we have a lot more young people than most other regions. But the tax revenue we were generating prior to these companies and these industries, moving here is relatively low because property value was relatively low here
compared to the rest of the state.
So you charge a percentage on the property value. So if the property value is low, there's only one way, to go to generate the taxes that you need is raising the rates.
Right.
So one way is just you need to create wealth. You need to create a bigger base, to tax. So if you don't have these type of industries coming here and you have a growing population, a lot of young kids going to school. So the amount of dollar per pupil that's going to the school is shrinking.
Right.
Because the more kids you have and you have like a constant, your tax revenue is not evolving, is not growing, and you have population that's growing, that means you're spending less and less money on these kids. So and we know that there is a correlation between the amount of money that's being spent per kid and the quality of the education and the training and so on. So if these kids, we're not spending enough money because we don't have it, because the community
doesn't have enough
tax revenue, to fund all these, proper programs and quality programs and so on, then you end up with, big population that's either undereducated or doesn't have the skill set that is needed.
We need.
So when you bring industries like this that are going to be, they may not create a lot of jobs, for the amount of money that's being invested, but they will generate a lot of tax revenue. So that tax revenue is going to increase the quality of the training because the funding is now there. So
so it's a win.
It's a win-win situation, besides all these other impacts that we talked about. I mean, the visibility.
No, I definitely think one of the things that I've talked about a lot with people here is that having kids tour SpaceX in elementary and junior high is going to create such a lasting impact. To be able to go and see a rocket, right? Most kids in the world do not get to see that, and not this close, right? Yes. And now they're giving tours to these kids, right? Everybody that I've interviewed for SpaceX here, there's a bunch of people that have moved here because SpaceX is here, and I've talked to them, and a lot of them tell me that the reason they're hooked on this stuff is something happened when they were a little kid.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, space camp or anything, that something impactful happened to them when they were a kid.
Yes.
And that's why they're super interested in these technologies. So having these reoccurring tours from the whole valley, having all these kids like, hey, look at this, check this out, check out the technology. We're going to go to space from right here in the valley.
Yes.
Or create the thing that's going to go to space from right here in the valley. That I think is going to hopefully help those future generations aspire, let's say.
Yes,
and probably you guys, and as a university, I mean, also like, hey, we need to also ramp up because of these technologies. No?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, there is a big push, I mean, nationwide, to promote, STEM fields. And it's not because, we have fewer, STEM graduates than
before.
before. Yes, that's true, but there is also a lot more to it. Because when you look at the STEM fields, they are well generating, they are self-sustaining. And you cannot say that about other fields.
Right.
They're all, important, whether it's education or, liberal arts or whatever, they're all, important. But when you look at, for example, a teacher, somebody that goes, to the university to become a teacher,
right,
versus somebody that goes to become an engineer. So the engineer, once they graduate, they have to generate, their own revenue. So they have to create things, they have to build things,
right,
they have to innovate and generate so they have to be self-sustaining. Whereas when you look at the teacher, the revenue that supports, teacher salaries and so on is coming from taxpayers' money. So somebody has to generate the wealth so
right,
we can tax it to pay these teachers.
Yes.
Not that the engineer is more important than the teacher, because they are.
No, but what
connected.
the engineer does help produce that income base to pay the teachers. Right.
Yeah. So you have wealth generating, so
right,
they generate the wealth. And then you have people that have degrees in business and stuff that help manage that, these innovations and these businesses. You also have lawyers that need to draft contracts and for everything to work together. Money. So it's an ecosystem that you have to create. But that ecosystem, if you remove the engineers, you remove the STEM out of it, then you kill it.
Right.
Because it's not self-sustaining. So that spark comes from the engineers that generate that wealth, but they don't know how to grow that wealth. They don't know how to market it. They don't know how to.
At UTRGV, I know you were here and then you left and then you came back.
Yes.
Have you seen a growth in engineering? Like number of students, I mean.
Well, I'm not the engineer. So
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
But so I mean, I'm working with, I have a dual appointment with business and engineering.
Right.
And when I was here the first time, I was just in business, but I was also involved with engineering. I have friends that were faculty in engineering, and we tried, to
yes, to like collaborate
resources and collaborate on projects where we have synergies. But I've seen, from what I have experienced returning, that there is a lot more excitement and interest and a push.
Well,
because
I spoke to you about I-Corps,
yes,
right? That I was the only, they call it community,
yes,
group, which means we're a business. Everybody else was an engineering student.
Yes.
That got taken by the School of Business.
Yes.
To this workshop, and I do think that I told you how much I've gotten out of it. I think these students are going to be like tremendously way better off.
Yes.
Doing like understanding entrepreneurship as an engineer.
So you create that ecosystem. I mean, we know the engineers. I mean, part of their requirement to graduate, especially in electrical and mechanical engineering, they have that senior design course requirement. It's a year long, where they have to take whatever they have been learning for 3 years and apply it in a project. So they need to come up with something, whether it's a product, device, or something that solves a problem. But once you have made that device, you have met your requirement. So if you don't know how to continue and continue developing, that concept, then it becomes just an academic exercise. I mean, here is the technology. We made this device, and it can do this. And then, at the
Right.
end of the
How do
semester
you-
you get your grades and you move on. But now that you're linking them with the business, they're showing them, okay, there is a market for this. You can turn it into a profitable venture, if it's a good device and there's a good market for it and so on.
So I'm going to close this part because I want to go to the technology
Sure.
part that we're going to talk about. But if you, and I don't know if you are, but if you were a gambling man, would you put your money on the Valley?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it has all the assets that you need, to be successful. You have space, you have young workforce, you have multimodal, transportation systems here. I mean, you have international airports, you have a port, you have highways, you have rail, good weather.
Yeah.
When
Sometimes too hot, but yeah.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
so it's not going to paralyze you.
Right.
When you have
Winter that you can't move kind of thing. Yeah.
and you are right on the border.
Yeah.
So you are.
There's a lot of advantages, disadvantages, and a lot of advantages.
Well, I think the advantages, outweigh the
Outweigh.
disadvantages because you have, a big economy,
The
just
commerce,
south of
yeah.
us, so it's and we also have, history, in manufacturing, so there's a long history of manufacturing along the border with the maquilas. I mean, the original maquilas were along the border.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they all started, along the border. So you have all these things, but projects like these ones that we're talking about just put the limelight.
Make it high. Make it a high visual billboard kind of thing. Yeah.
So it's easier to recruit when you're looking at all these factors. We have everything you need, to start.
So there you go. Dr. Malki says you should move to the Valley.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let me move on because I want to. I know we have limited time, and I want to get to this new technology that we've been playing with. Right. So, let's talk about a little bit about why you are so involved in Sweden, or how does this happen, and then we'll lean on to the technology that we're going to talk about. But I know it comes from there. But how did that happen?
Well, I have very big network and strong connections, in Scandinavia, and mostly in Sweden, but also in the other Scandinavian countries. And
This happened because you were a professor and you were traveling, or?
well, this even before, I mean, this is when I was still a teenager.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, we had friends from Scandinavia, and
You're from Morocco, right?
I'm from Morocco.
People.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we have friends there, and we travel there, and we developed relationships there, and then these relationships grew because one person introduced you to another person, and you meet some really amazing, very interesting people there. And then I started taking students with me to Sweden, but before even taking the students, I was always curious about the technologies there, and I would go there and visit different innovation centers, science parks, and so on, to see, what are they working on? What's the latest thing? I mean, because they are working on all kind of cool stuff. I mean, all the, most countries are, especially, developed countries. But there, because it's a relatively small country, not size-wise.
So they're all
population-wise.
They're all crowded together.
Yeah, so when you look at Sweden, the population density in southern Sweden is much higher than the north because of,
weather, maybe?
Weather and a number of other things.
Right.
But you have concentration in southern Sweden and then in the Stockholm area.
Right.
But there is a lot of activity in southern Sweden. And that region, southern Sweden, along with Copenhagen, which happens to be very close to southern Sweden. So Copenhagen is about, 15, 20 minutes from Malmö, one of the biggest cities in Sweden. And they call that region the Greater Copenhagen region or area.
Okay.
Because they tend to
because they
collaborate.
take everything. Yeah.
So it's a little different than what we have here. We have...
It's like Houston that has all these, you're close to everybody.
Yes, but you have two countries.
Right. It's more, it's international.
Operate almost like one country. So even though these are two separate countries, there is no border, there is a flow of ideas, flow of businesses.
Free trade. Completely free trade.
It's completely open. It's almost like you have two American states.
Okay.
You know, so if you have activity just along the border of those two states, it doesn't feel like you are in two different states. It's just one.
Right, one country. Like it feels
one
like
state because there's no restrictions and nothing. So it's very much like that. Plus, that's the part of the world, I think, with the highest concentration of PhDs in, you know. So the highest concentration of PhDs are in that region.
I thought it was Edinburgh, but no, I'm just kidding. But
yes.
yeah.
and so there's a lot of R&D that's happening there because you have the brain power, to do that type of stuff. Plus they have specialized in certain industries. So we have Silicon Valley, they have Medicon Valley there, around Lund, which is a Swedish city in the south. And they are, they are working on amazing.
So Silicon
things.
Valley here obviously influences the whole country. So are you saying, do they influence all of Europe?
There's
in these
lot,
industries?
well, just not Europe. I mean, there's a lot of research that's actually connected to the rest of the world that's being done there.
Similar to Silicon Valley's impact on the world, let's say. Yeah.
So there's a lot of medical, pharmaceutical research that's going on there, but there's also a lot of industries because Sweden is a big industrial country. And to me, it's Europe's best kept secret, and I like keeping it
You like
secret.
keeping it secret?
Yeah.
Well, we're telling people now. I'm just
Yes,
kidding.
but...
Yeah. No. So let's go into this. So how did you come across this technology? That we'll talk about what it is, but
well, I took students 1 year. I think it was 2012.
When you say you're taking students, are you taking students from the Valley?
Yes.
Okay.
When I was here the first time, I took a group of students. It was part of a study abroad program, and we went to southern Sweden and Denmark, and when we went also to Norway. But when we were there, we went to this innovation center, Krinova. It's in Kristianstad. And this it's an innovation center, science park, and an incubator. Very, very active. And the CEO, who's a good friend of mine, she was the CEO at the time. Excuse me. She's now at Lund University. We ran a little workshop with the students. So she asked them, she shared with them a lot of information, and then she asked them about recycling. So she shared with them that in Sweden, there are no landfills. They don't bury stuff, and they haven't
any
done
trash,
it in a very long time. I believe like 40 years or more. So they recycle everything. And then she asked them, what percentage of waste do you guys recycle? And they looked at her like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't recycle anything.
Just throw everything out.
And so we talked, and I think the following year I was there. I did not take students in 2013, 2014, but I was there. I usually go, as often as I can. And one of my friends, introduced me to this other friend who's a serial entrepreneur. He has 14 companies that he's managing. He's managing 14 companies himself. And one of the companies, they have developed technology, for composting, for taking, he has partners in Hong Kong, but they have developed this technology, to take organic waste and recycle it and compost it in 24 hours.
Yes, which is incredible. So that's the reason that I wanted to talk to you about this, because one, I've seen it, right, which is crazy. And I've seen it with PhDs who thought it was crazy. They're like, it's not gonna work, right?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Pietro was like, it's not gonna work. And it's like next day he was like, oh crap. So the and then I've taken people in the like gardening industry and stuff with you, and also they've been obviously pleasantly surprised by the technology. So from what I understand, right, you take waste. Mm-hmm. Organic waste, right? Could be any kind of organic waste from what I've seen, right?
Yes.
You put it in a machine. There are different sizes of machines that I've seen. And obviously, I think there's even a facility that you can build for a big city. So you put this in there. There is some kind of patented technology that works in the machine to convert this waste into compost in 24 hours.
Yes.
Normally, compost takes Six 6 weeks, 6 months,
depending on with
on the
ideal
type
weather,
of yeah.
ideal weather conditions and the type of waste that you're using. It will take about 3 months, 4 months,
Yeah,
and
so
sometimes up to a year.
this is a crazy amount of speed
Yes.
for like in technology.
Yes.
This is like taking something and being able to do it
Yeah.
like super fast now.
Yes.
So the value of that, I think, is huge. I think the people that we've taken to see it can see it right away.
Yes.
So take us a little bit through what the company is doing now. They're barely going to start this technology in the United States, but they're in several parts of the world, right?
Yes, they are already in Northern Europe, in Europe in general, but they're also growing really fast in China and in Australia and some parts of the Middle East, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia.
Are they growing in China because of just the great? I would just imagine there's a great need to just process waste as in general, just because there's so many people.
Yes. Well, they're growing in China because one, my friend Patrick's, from Sweden.
Yes.
His partner is from Hong Kong, and they have facilities in China. Plus, there is a lot of organic waste that's being generated there as well. So there is a need for this technology, and they have been developing it. Unlike Sweden, where you don't have landfills, so they recycle everything, from the source. In China, is a little bit more like what we have here.
Yes. You're a economics professor. I said at the beginning, right? And you said something very interesting, which I want you to say again. But you said there is always, we talk about goods.
Yes.
But we never talk about bads. Can you explain that in this context of the compost?
Well, from an economic standpoint, a good is some type of product or service that is desirable, that you are willing to pay for it to get it.
Right.
So when you buy food or clothing, whatever, those are goods. They're desirable. Everybody wants them. The more, the better. More.
Right.
And then we have other economic goods that usually we don't talk about. And they are not really goods. I'm using good in quotes, but they are economic bads. These are the opposite of the goods. These are undesirable things that you are willing to pay to get rid of them.
Correct.
Waste is one thing.
Right.
Is such.
We're all taxed, at least in the United States. We're all taxed for them to come and get the trash from your house.
Yes. So
right?
we pay, through your utility bill and stuff, you pay for garbage, pickup and so on, because nobody wants it. The city doesn't want it.
Right.
But since they are in charge of collecting it and getting rid of it, so they will charge you, to come and take that bad from you that you don't want and get rid of it.
And then currently, like where we live and probably the majority of the United States, they use that money that they take from us to manage this huge area of just waste.
Yes. So it's an antiquated, way of managing this waste. So basically we take a big piece of land and then we collect all this waste and we bury it.
Right.
So that land becomes unusable. I mean, for a long time, because as the waste, is decomposing, it generates,
Yeah. And then you're mixing it with chemicals, you're mixing it with all kinds of things. Yeah.
So it's not really healthy to build on top of it. So usually it sits idle for a number of years until
they move to another piece of land and they leave that one there. Yeah.
They deem it, safe, to use again,
right.
But that's usually about 50 years or so. And then when it's deemed, usable again, then you cannot put houses on it. They usually put a golf course or something,
right?
Open air type of, activity. But as soon as, you fill in that piece of land, then you need to look for another piece of land to start doing the same thing. So it's not a very efficient use of that resource, the land. Or the waste, because when we were in Sweden with the group of students, and that friend of mine asked them, what the percentage of waste that we recycle, and they told her we don't recycle anything. She looked at them like,
"What's wrong with you?"
Yes, she says those are resources. That's money you guys are throwing away.
Yes.
So what the Swedes have managed to do is to turn this thing into a sustainable for-profit type of activity. So things that we thought, is just a waste and we need to get rid of it, and we're willing to pay to get rid of it, they turn it into an activity that's self-sustaining and it's profitable.
It's an asset now.
Yeah. So it's profitable because there are companies here in the US that are, managing this waste in a profitable way. But the way they are doing it is not sustainable. So we have large, waste management companies that we, contract with to manage these landfills for us. But all they are doing is taking the waste and burying it. But the Swedes, what they have managed to do is that waste that is being buried is turned into a good. So they transform it from a bad into a good, something that you are willing to pay to get it back.
Right.
So it's a free input.
Yes. So that is what compost becomes,
yes.
right? Compost becomes the good.
Yes.
So you put the bad in and you become into a good. We were talking about earlier about the value of that,
yes.
right? That we were looking at one company that already put a value on it and mm-hmm. what they could sell it for, mm-hmm. and how that the machine that they would install could pay itself off,
yes.
just by doing that one process in their organization.
Yes.
Right? And so right now in Sweden, they're using this technology
mm-hmm.
to are cities using the technology?
There are cities, there are businesses, but since the waste is really recycled and separated, at the source, at the house level, at the company level, so it doesn't get to the point where it goes to the city. Yes, there's a lot of waste that the city collects, especially household organic waste. So the households in Sweden will separate all the waste. So they have like 5 bins or 4 bins, and one is for paper, one is for glass, one is for organic waste, and so on. So the municipality will come and collect those bins, and it goes into a recycling center. It doesn't go to a landfill where we bury it.
Right.
So it goes to different...
Yeah, plastics will go with plastics.
Yeah. And it gets recycled, and it gets reused again. And the waste is turned into compost, or it's turned into biogas. So they have, for example, in Kristianstad, they are actually recycling wastewater from the sewer and generating biogas out of it. So their heavy equipment, their city buses, they all run on biogas from wastewater from the sewer. And the process takes all that water. We do some processing of wastewater in the US, but it's not sufficient. We don't do it properly. We add chemicals to it just to eliminate, the odor, and then we filter the solids that are floating in there.
Right.
And then it becomes this marginal water that sometimes we use for irrigation. So I'm sure everybody have seen, the water truck driving that says non-potable water. You cannot drink it, because it's not safe to drink. It has pathogens and stuff. So we use it, to irrigate, lawns and things like that. In Sweden, what they do, they purify that water that it's cleaner than what you buy
at the a little bottle water.
Yeah. And it goes back into the system. So it's a very efficient way of using your water. So you don't waste that water, because once, we use it and we flush it in our toilet, then you cannot use it for anything, you cannot drink it anymore, because now it's contaminated, and we don't have a system that filters it to a point where we can put it back into the system. In Sweden, they do that because, and Sweden is a water-rich country, so they don't have really a problem with water.
Right.
They have plenty of water, but they understand that it takes, from what I was told, 70 years for the water to seep back all the way to the water table, in the ground. So they want to make sure that the water that they take out,
they use as much as much as possible,
yes,
or give it the best use.
And the water that they have used and are disposing of is as clean, if not cleaner, than the one they took out. So when it goes back into the system, it's ready to be used, it's safe, and so on. And in the process, the technology that they're using, it extracts biogas that they use for their heavy equipment
as energy,
and for their buses. Yeah. So it's an efficient way. So they saving, and it's cleaner burning gas than diesel, because our buses, most of them run on diesel. We have some compressed natural gas, but most buses and trucks and heavy equipment, your front loaders and
they're all running on
diesel. So it's much cleaner, and it's cheaper, because it's a renewable resource, So it's not like
it's
petroleum and so on. And then the solids that they remove gets processed and it's turned into organic fertilizer. That's safe to use and it eliminates all pathogens and so on and so forth. So that's one way, that they use, for their organic waste. The other one is to compost it, using this technology. So this technology, what it does, it just takes this waste, it goes into a vessel, it's a machine, but it's nothing more than just
a tank. It's a tank within a machine, let's say.
Yeah, right? So it's a tank that provides all the...
It reminded me of what in between, it looks like an ice machine.
Yes.
But it works like I would say a washing machine.
Yes.
Like that's how it's a tumbler.
Yes.
But it looks like if you look at it, it probably looks like an ice machine.
Yeah. So it needs four things to work. It needs warmth. So it needs heat, it needs humidity, airflow, and the key ingredient, which is this proprietary bacterium that is what makes it work in 24 hours. Yes,
I think, right?
Yes. So you have to create this perfect environment for it. For lack of a better term, it's like the perfect storm. All the conditions, are met in that vessel. Now that machine, would raise the temperature to about 110 degrees Celsius on the outside. But inside the vessel, you will go up to 70 degrees Celsius. And then most of the time, it's at about 55, 60 Celsius. And that will kill any pathogen that is in that waste. So it's very safe to handle and to use and so on because it kills anything that's harmful.
Now, the machine that we've been working on or testing on here in Brownsville is at the university cafeteria.
Yes,
right?
It was there.
Yes. So kids eat sandwiches and pizzas, right? That's if you're in the university, it's probably what you eat, right?
Yes.
So what I saw is they put a lot of sandwiches and pizzas in this thing.
Especially uncooked.
Uncooked pizza dough they didn't use. Yeah. So then in 24 hours, it turned into dirt. I'll call it dirt, but it's compost.
Yes.
Right? We had Dr. Fierro actually take it, or not take it, but get some of that and send it to Texas A&M.
Yes.
For testing.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that it could be used as, it's not nutrient dense because it's pizza dough and
it's high on certain nutrients and low on others. It's just because of the feed that we have been using. We have been using mostly processed food, pizza dough and leftover fried chicken and sandwiches and bread and so on.
Right.
So the feedstock is not really ideal. But when you have organic waste, so you have a variety of waste,
We talked about a horse farm.
Yes.
Right? That's also tested it.
Yes.
And the difference is that. Right?
Oh, the difference in terms of the quality of the nutrient that was in the horse manure that was processed was just unbelievable. It was balanced. It was, we were told that it can be labeled as 1-1-1. So it's a balance. It has equal amount of nitrogen, potassium, and magnesium. And it has all other micro and macronutrients in it. And the machine can also compost cardboard. So if you add cardboard or sawdust or wood chips or anything that's rich in carbon, then you have
the whole combination that you need for growing plants.
Yes.
So now, what kind of organization, what kind of company could use this? Like we've talked about, obviously we have it in a cafeteria. We've talked about restaurants, right? Restaurants could use it and use that dirt especially if they have gardens or maybe the bigger restaurants or whatever that have gardens. Universities, maybe.
Anybody that generates organic waste, which is everybody,
right,
can use it. So we have, we looked at different applications. So we have small household devices that will process about 12 pounds. I've seen
it looks like a trash can.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a nice looking little device.
Yes.
And it will process about 12 pounds per day, of organic waste, which is more than any household, produces in a single day. And then from there you go to industrial machines that process 75 pounds per day or 10 ton per year. So there we count them, per ton per year.
Is that what we're looking
at? That's the
here?
one we had at university. So that we have 10 ton, 30 ton, 50, 100, 200, 300, 500, and now they are making a 600 ton machine. which is, with some techniques, it will process 2 tons of waste per day.
What that, like, if just thinking of that, right, is, and I don't know if 600 is maybe too much, but for example, a Bellagio in Las Vegas, right, that has so many gardens and has so many like plants that they have to maintain on a continuous basis, and they're just throwing all the waste away.
Yes,
they're probably buying compost on and all kinds of dirt to like do these because they have beautiful flowers and beautiful inside and out. And like that, there's probably many resorts, many places like that that could probably hedge their waste and their money they're spending on upkeep.
Yes. Well, I mean, when we look at who can use it, I mean, from a household all the way to landfills.
Right.
And between the household and the landfill, it could be schools, hospitals, hotels, restaurants, businesses that have cafeterias. We know in Sweden, IKEA uses it because they have a restaurant at their stores.
Correct.
Volvo, the manufacturing plant, uses it. This is in Sweden. So a lot of big industrial businesses are using it. It's not just restaurants, but whenever you have a source of organic waste, you can use it.
And to be clear, I think in the U.S. composting is a thing. I mean, we know that McAllen does it, right, as a city, and they only do it with the brushes and whatever trees and all of that get that the city picks up. They don't do it with the waste.
They do some waste, but they are very selective about the waste. Because I spoke with the people from the McAllen Produce Terminal, and they said that the landfill doesn't want to take mangoes, for example, avocados, and certain other types of waste because it has the pit.
Oh, yeah.
And it will not, compost.
Decompose, yeah.
So our machines will compost anything.
Anything.
So even, we were at the Waste Expo so the National Waste Expo is the big one. They usually have it in Las Vegas, but, they rotate Las Vegas and New Orleans. So this past year in May was in New Orleans. So we had it there, and we put watermelon, and we put a whole chicken in there, bones and all, and it composted everything. So we will compost proteins, compost even small bones like chicken bones and fish
You
bones.
had it on display?
Yeah.
What was the reaction?
Oh, everybody, loved it because, I mean, there's nothing
comparable.
I mean,
the 24-hour thing, I think, is just a game changer.
Because when you think, for example, if we take McAllen, and they are doing the right thing. I mean, you need to compost. You cannot just keep burying it because, it has so many
because we talked
externalities. But when you look at McAllen, so they are composting the brush and all that stuff, and it takes them, sometimes up to a year, sometimes a little longer than a year to compost because it's dry and it's sitting. And there's all kind of other issues with composting it that way. And that's the traditional way of composting. It requires a lot of land,
right? Because
you're collecting waste for a whole year. So it takes a whole year. So you have these big piles of waste, and sometimes
you have to start a new pile over here because you can't contaminate this pile.
Yeah,
this pile is composed.
Yeah. So every day you start a new pile. So you have piles. Maybe at least if you do one pile a day, at least 365 piles.
Right.
So McAllen, their facility, I think they have 55 acres, if I remember correctly, but you have all this stuff that's compost in there, and it's dry. So every now and then you will have a fire.
Right.
And I asked them about the fire, and they said, yeah, we have them, quite frequently, but you don't have, a big fire with flames. It's just a number that's eating through that, and you just have smoke, and they just sit and wait for it, to just burn itself and die out. With our technology, you don't have that. You don't have that backlog, of waste accumulating for a whole year because the waste comes in the morning. By next morning, it's already ready to be
Apart from
out.
that, you said 55 acres.
Yes.
So you probably can narrow that down to 1 acre.
1 acre will do what they're doing in 55 acres.
Right.
And we'll do it a lot more efficiently.
And a daily basis, you have, we found out, but while we're doing this, that they market that compost to the whole gardening community in the valley.
Yes.
Right? And so they could also make more money quicker.
Yes, so they have to wait a whole year before they can sell the
commercialize what they have now.
with our model, they can sell it the next day. So instead of waiting 365 days, you can sell it in one day. So it's a lot more efficient, a lot quicker. You use the space that you have, a lot more efficiently. So that 55 acres, or you could turn it into an industrial park, you could turn it into something else. So it doesn't have to be a facility that's dedicated exclusively to composting.
Now, I've seen videos of the facilities.
Yes.
Right? They're huge. Yeah. They're big, and I think the processing power is huge, right? Mm-hmm. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand this correctly, there's some facilities that even sort the type of waste so that it can make sure that just organic waste goes into the compost. Mm-hmm. But these are massive, right? So what I want you to explain is how simple is what I saw at the cafeteria to do, right? How this ice machine that I call ice machine, right? That looks like an ice machine. How simple is it to use?
Well, it's very simple. It works just like a trash can. So it doesn't have any connection, so you don't have to connect it to the water or to the sewer or to any.
It's just electricity.
It's just a plug. You plug it into the electrical outlet, and then it works. Once it's up and running, it works just like a trash can. You just open the lid and you put the trash just like you put in trash in a trash can, and you close it. And 24 hours later, you come and it's already composted.
Every day you just harvest the dirt.
Not every day, because most of the waste, organic waste, has a lot of moisture in it. Sometimes up to 90% of the waste is just
so it becomes very
moisture.
Small. Yeah.
So it shrinks it by up to 90%, depending on what you're using. So for the horse farm that we have tested it at, because horse manure and cow manure is pretty dry.
Right.
So when you reduce it by 70%. So you put 100 pounds, and at the end of the day, that 100 pounds has reduced to 30 pounds. But when you have fruits and vegetables, it would reduce from 100 pounds to 10 pounds. So the beauty of our system, the ice machine, is when you put that waste, at the end of the day, it has reduced. So you don't have to empty it every day. So usually we empty it once a week, if you fill it every day.
So for lack of a better word, you harvest every week.
Every week, yeah.
If you're a restaurant or that kind of organization, right?
Yeah.
The horse farm, were they doing it every week as well, or or sooner?
Yes. No, every week. So they were producing a lot more horse
and
manure.
Let's talk about that because you said it was a problem.
Yes.
So what is the problem with having a horse farm? I mean, obviously it's the manure.
That horse farm, it's a rescue farm,
for animals that need a place.
Yeah. So they have a lot of horses, and those horses produce almost 1 ton of manure per day.
What were they doing with it?
They just collect it, put it in bags, and then they have to pay to have it taken to some facility, I think, in Fort Worth. Yeah, so this farm is in McKinney, and it has to be taken all the way to some facility in Fort Worth.
And that had to be paid?
They pay for that, yeah. So they pay for the service, and then you pay for the diesel, and you pay for the trailer.
And then it gets to Fort Worth? And then what happens?
They process it there, they turn it into compost, but they are doing it the traditional way. So it sits. And
5 years from now, it's but 6 months from now, it's compost or whatever.
Yeah, so they are composting also waste from the zoo, the Dallas Zoo there. So they're composting some waste there. So they have to pay for it. So this farm, they were looking at using our technology to take that horse waste and turn it into compost that they can sell, and they had it tested, and it actually came out as an ideal compost. It was 1-1-1 compost, balanced. Again, I think I mentioned it earlier. Nitrogen, potassium, and magnesium.
And okay, let's forget about that for a second,
yes.
Right? You just told me that it cost them to send this to Fort Worth, right?
Yes.
So let's say they were doing that once a week or whatever, and they're paying once a week, comes the truck, takes everything to Fort Worth, right? If instead of that, you buy a machine, right? And even if it's just auto-sufficient, like you're not selling it, you're just going to use it in your farm because you have a farm, you're still probably in the same range or less than you were before, but you have compost now that you didn't have, because when you give it to Fort, you're paying to take it to Fort Worth. Fort Worth's not going to send you that compost back.
No, they don't send it back.
Right.
I mean, you pay.
So even if you don't take it to market, if you just use it for yourself, you still can probably justify that machine, I would think.
Well, not that horse farm, because it's not really a farm that's growing crops and stuff. So they will generate more ways that they can use, more compost, that they can use. So they have to sell it, or figure out a way, to get to sell it. But it's a lot more easier to sell the compost than to get rid of that horse waste.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Like you've seen the farming, the urban farming community from Brownsville that we took, right? It said it was gold.
Yes.
Right. The first time they saw it is like, you guys can make gold.
Yes.
Right. Because it is so needed in just urban farms or any kind of gardening that has to be done. I think in any kind of like what we talked about, Bellagio, even botanical gardens, all of these places that need super rich and nutrient dense fertilizer and soil because of what they do, right? And so I think that this becomes very valuable.
Yes, it's valuable because it's a marketable community. You take something that has no value, actually it has negative value, you need to pay to get rid of it, and you turn it into something that has positive value. But more than that, it's all organic. I mean, right now we're using a lot of chemical fertilizer. It helps grow crops and stuff, but it's not really the best way to do things. I mean, you look at the Gulf of Mexico, all the effluent coming through the rivers and
it's the fertilizer and the disinfectants and the pesticides. It obviously hurts the food.
Yeah, I mean the quality of the food and so on. So now you have this alternative that's all organic. It's all natural, and it's safe. It's pathogen free, and it's from within. The sources. So you take nutrient out of the soil, it goes into the food that you're growing, and then you capture it again from the food and put it back into the soil. So it's the same nutrient. You just close the cycle. So it's a closed cycle now. Instead of you depleting the soil and then you replenishing that soil with artificial and chemical fertilizer. With the composting, you take something from the soil that's natural, goes is absorbed by the plants as they grow, and then you recycle those plants, in the form of food or waste or what have you, and then you put it back into the soil. So it's the best way that I can think of, of restoring soil health, in an organic way.
Now, this sounds awesome, right? It sounds like, it's a very good solution, right? To a problem that I think a lot of people have, or probably people that haven't even identified as a problem have it. These organizations or companies or even municipalities. But how hard is it to get one of these machines to the U.S.?
Well, right now the machines are manufactured in Sweden.
Yes.
So it's not really hard to ship them here. Once they are shipped, they take about, a maximum of 2 weeks to reach the customer, to clear customs. And
do they customize a machine for you, or do they have machines on the assembly line ready to go?
They have some that are ready to go in stock, and then they have the big machines. They are
more custom.
So you order it, and then they will.
This that we have at a cafeteria here, that's just assembly line machine.
That's right off the shelf. Yeah.
Okay, and so they do have the capability of start supplying the U.S.
Yes. So the idea is we want to develop the market here in the U.S. because our idea, and we talked about, Texas LNG and SpaceX.
Right.
The idea is to manufacture them here in the Valley, to bring that technology here and, start making them here.
Is like another $3 billion investment?
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we manufacture them here, then we can market them all over.
Then it becomes easier to move them here. But yes. So there is a potential of then manufacturing them in the U.S.
Yes, but for us is we need to first, because people are not aware. I think we're in the awareness stage
of this, right? And what we're trying to do is for more people to find out. One, because we think, at least what I've seen, and I've been very excited since I saw this, And I'm not a big gardener or big, but I have become, because my house has. I found all of this because my house has horrible dirt.
Yes.
And you don't find out about horrible dirt till you have your own house, and then you try to like dig a hole and it's all clay, and you're like, why is it so hard? You put a plant, it dies.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure this out, and then luckily, we've met people like Vero that you met,
Yes.
that run urban farms, and I learned a lot more because we were documenting some of the stuff.
Yes.
And I learned a lot more about the process, and then you start understanding that the dirt that you produce or the dirt that you use is going to give you a very nutrient dense food as
Yes.
well, right?
Yes.
So it's a whole cycle of positive impact for your life just to grow, like to be able to compost and then grow food on that compost.
Yes.
And then again, like eat that. And so I think that trying to make people aware that this type of technology exists
Yes.
is vital now.
Yeah.
You know?
And we have not even talked about, the way that we're processing our waste right now.
Correct.
In terms of the methane that it generates. I mean, there's a push, to look for better ways to eliminate this methane. We already have 15 states that have banned the use of landfill to dispose of organic waste.
The whole state. Like the whole state has banned it.
Some of them are the whole state. California is the whole state. Most of the northeastern states, are the whole states. And then you have some other states that are within the large municipalities.
So let's take California. What is
Yes.
their solution?
You have to compost. Not just compost. You
But-
have to figure out a way.
But you're doing McAllen type compost.
they are doing
acres and
yeah,
acres and
yes,
acres of
yes.
just waste.
Yeah, we have
waiting.
talked to one of the landfills there, and they have signed a contract with the company. They dug up, this huge pool-like pond, and they dump all that waste there, and then they cover it with this tarp and let it, decompose.
Well, you just said you were at the Waste Expo.
Yes.
Was there anything compatible to that technology at the expo?
There was one company that are using something somewhat similar. It's out of Ireland.
Okay.
It's the
So they
same
were also
kind.
European.
It's European, but their process is a little different than our process. I think they are still at the early stage and they're learning as they go, because my Swedish friends have tested that many, many years ago, and it did not work as well as the system that they have, because I don't know what generations they are in now with their machines, but every iteration, they improve the machine. So the one you saw, then what they are doing, I said earlier that you need 4 components, to compost: heat,
Right.
moisture, airflow,
And the bacteria.
and the bacterium. Okay, what they are doing, so you have to have that heat. And when waste is being decomposed, as it starts the process of composting, it generates its own heat. The reason why it takes so long is because it takes a long time before it reaches that high temperature for composting. With our machine, we accelerate the process through the bacteria, but also creating that environment right away. So you don't have to wait 3-4 months for that
To be
temperature
ready, yeah.
to reach the optimal level, to decompose. So what they have done, over the years, they have kept improving the process. And now what they're doing, the airflow, it doesn't go straight, from the air pump into the vessel, because you need to have airflow there. What they do, they are redirecting the airflow to go through the motor, and it picks up heat from the motor, because it has a heater, and it also has a motor that move that agitator, that those blades that
that break up. Yeah.
So they are picking up heat from the motor, so they are cooling the motor in the same process, which extends the life of the motor, but they also capturing, that heat and bringing it into the vessel. So you reach that optimal temperature right away, really quickly. So instead of relying just on your heaters to heat the chamber, now the heat is coming from different sources. And it reduces the consumption of electricity. First, those machines are very efficient.
Right.
But it reduces the consumption of electricity between 15 and I believe 25%, just by redirecting the airflow
So is the Irish machine also a 24-hour machine? Based on what you just told me, it's not, right?
It's not 24 hours,
Yeah.
but it's not 3 months either.
Right.
Yeah. So
It's some kind of in between.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a week or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the 24-hour thing is amazing.
Yes,
I mean, that
yes.
to me is probably one of the keys to this technology, because it's so fast
Yes.
that you can take advantage of it right away. We saw this at the cafeteria, right? Where we took Dr. Fierro, he was like, this is not going to work. And that's what he does,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so when he saw it, when everybody's seen it, it's been so amazing, because the rapidness of it, I
Yes.
think, adds to the solution
Yes.
in a way that's so impactful. I think that hopefully if we can display it to people, they will catch on really quick. But
Yes.
I think that it's a viable solution
Yes.
that can change the way we do things.
Yeah. For many people, they have to see it to believe it, because when you tell them, we can take waste.
I saw that, right? I
Yeah.
saw it, the doctors, right? It's not like
That's his
it's not like
area of
me, right?
expertise, yeah.
You could trick me into believing whatever, right?
Yeah.
You could have filled it up with dirt the next day and be like, "Hey, look, I got dirt."
Yeah.
But that's what he does, and
Yes.
I saw his. We were there when we
Yeah.
installed it. I saw his he saw the whole process. Like he was just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and then the next time I saw him, he was just incredulous, and he was like, I can't. We're sending this to A&M,
Yeah.
and we're gonna test it. He was excited,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you know the solution is very, very viable,
Yes.
right? Because the people who study this can see the potential.
Yes. So this is not a brand new technology that just came out,
Right.
a month
It's
ago.
it's brand new for me.
For here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it has been used in
How long have they been in business? More or less.
I would say at least 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
At
So
least.
they've been at it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's growing really fast, in other parts of the world. In Australia, actually, we have a video of the Grand Hyatt Hotel in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And they partnered with the city where they're creating jobs for young people, to, use this to plant trees and help beautify, the city, using the process. The one I think in Dubai, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Ramada Hotel, where they have their own vegetable gardens and herb gardens. So they are using their own compost to grow their own.
I think that
Yes.
we know in the U.S. the
Yes.
marketing to us is always like big
Yes.
restaurants is farm to table, right? They're always
Yes.
telling us farm to table,
Yes.
right? And it's like, okay, what are you doing after that, right?
Yes.
And so this really adds a solution that is probably making their point bigger than it's not just farm to table, is we can take it back,
Yes.
right? And so I think it's very needed in the U.S. I'm hoping that people start finding us,
Yes.
and start asking questions, at least to start with the answering of the questions, because I'm sure there's a lot of doubt.
Yes.
But if we can start informing people and somehow impacting in this renewable compost, I think it changes a lot. Apart from that, the culture in the U.S. has shifted. Not everybody, but a lot of people grow vegetables in their own house.
Yes, people are becoming more aware and more, more aware about what they are consuming.
Yes.
And it's usually, I don't want to go into the economics of it, but, cities that are relatively more affluent, they tend to be a little bit more, curious about, okay, where is my food coming from? They're a little bit more.
Are you
concerned.
trying not to say liberal? I'm just kidding. Wait.
No, it doesn't have to. It's not just liberal.
But in Texas, I would say Austin would be.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, even Dallas.
Right.
In Dallas, and
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, also the bigger they become, the bigger the solution they need, and the bigger the problem of waste becomes, and the bigger it's all compounding to them.
Yes, because the issues that you are concerned about, as your income increases, it changes, because you have already satisfied your basic needs and stuff.
Right.
So now your next pressing issue is not the same as somebody that's just barely making ends meet. So somebody that's making barely making ends meet. I mean, they don't care where
Right.
it's coming.
They
I just need to have enough food.
That's
to
the
feed my
dollar
kids.
store type
Yeah.
thing, right?
But as you go up,
Right.
that
When you start buying at Whole Foods.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you need to know, where is my food coming from?
Right. I want to know everything about my
healthy?
food.
Is it safe? Is it?
Yeah. I want to know everything. I want to know where it was fished. Is this wild caught?
Yes.
Is this?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Because I mean, you start to be curious about,
Yes.
what you're eating. If you are getting, farmed, fish that has been farmed and has been,
No,
loaded with-
it's part of a health,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I think that the more we understand, and the U.S. has been horrible at this till recently,
Yeah.
because we're the fast food kings, right?
Yeah.
So we made the fast food culture prevalent across the world.
We can still have our fast food, but the ingredients that you put in.
Speaking of that, Panera Bread is testing it now.
Yes,
correct.
Yeah, we have the machine at Panera Bread at their
corporate office.
test kitchen in Newton, Massachusetts, just outside Boston.
Yeah,
And
so that's a solution for.
yes, because they do generate just like any other food, service industry business. They generate waste. I mean, there are leftovers. There's stuff that's being generated during the preparation of the food, the processing or what have you. So there is waste that's being generated, and now the city or the state is telling them, well, you cannot send it to the landfill because it's one of the main source of methane gas, and so we need to find a different alternative. So what are you going to do with it?
How did you connect with them through the expo or?
Well, actually, my friend Martin that you have met with, one of his friends from Sweden is actually, I think he's the executive chef, if I'm not mistaken, for Panera, and he is aware of the technology. So
it's Sweden again.
Yeah, so Sweden keeps coming. But he found out that we are bringing the machine here. He says, well, I want one, in my test kitchen, so people can see how we can take the waste and
that's amazing
and recycle it and so on. So, and we have one of his colleagues that I have been in touch with, and I will text him, every other week, just to ask him
how long has it been there right now?
It's been there a little over a month.
Okay.
So
they're giving you like a weekly progress report?
I was getting a daily progress report when we first put it in there, and every time I talk to them, they said, no, it's working perfect. So I said, okay, I'll be texting you once a week, and then went from once a week to.
We mentioned that
twice.
the one here in the cafeteria,
Yes.
Dr. Fierro tested it at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
We mentioned that the horse farm tested it. I think you said not even just Texas A&M, they tested it at this association for composting.
For composting, yes.
Is Panera going to test? Or are they testing?
Well, they are not testing, but I am going to test the waste. I'm going to take samples from.
Because I would imagine that's going to be in between cafeteria and
because they do
horse
have
farm.
a little bit more variety.
They have breads, obviously.
Menu than the cafeteria at the university.
Yes.
So the cafeteria at the university was just pizza and chicken sandwiches.
Kids, yeah.
But there they have soups. Actually, they have been put in.
No, they have salads. They have different
soups and salads and sandwiches and bread and So it's a little bit different, input that they're putting into the machine. So I want to see the nutrient that's in that type of waste. Yeah. And we are planning on testing, whenever we take it somewhere different, we want to test their waste to see what nutrient is in it.
And from what I understand, there's more machines on the way to help with this testing.
Yes.
And so hopefully we can give a progress report. What I want to do now is maybe get the information from the farm, get the information from from Panera Bread when they start testing the tests that we're doing here, so people can actually see these numbers and see that it's just lab reports and be able to like make these assessments on their own, not just us telling them what's going on, and start documenting this more. But if somebody's interested, how do they get a hold of you? How do they get a hold of this concept?
Well, we have a website,
Okay.
the Nordic Technology Company.com, and we have our contact info there, so they can reach out to us, and we can
direct them in the right place. Direct them in the right place to like, because I would think that a lot of people don't know about this yet, and if they are able to see this as a solution,
Yes.
there's probably many people looking for a solution like this that haven't found it.
Yes.
Right. So I think that it's going to be very necessary for us to try to like get to those people so they can
Yes.
see what's going on and at least ask questions and figure out where the fit is. But I do definitely think that there's already a fit of this product that's not being utilized yet.
Yes.
And so as fast as we can get to them, we've talked about different networks that we can
Yes.
hopefully think. But I'm really excited because I saw the technology. I'm now wanting to have one of these trash cans in my house so I can make my own dirt
Yeah.
with my own waste and put it in my garden. And I think that hopefully that's going to be commonplace in the future. You know?
Well, I hope so, because you can buy a trash compactor.
Yes.
So this machine, is not going to compact your trash. This
Yes,
will
yes.
recycle your
No, this
organic
makes
waste.
dirt.
Yes, it will recycle your waste, and you can
Yeah.
use it if you have a yard or plants. You can use it, as a nutrient. And
Hey, it's crazy. I've told you, my
plant food,
dirt
yeah.
is the most horrible dirt that
Yeah.
you can imagine. And I've bought dirt before. They brought trucks loads of dirt just so that I can plant some
Yes.
plants and make myself happy
Yeah.
that they grow. So imagine if I could just do it in my house
Yes,
every day.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about it. I'm hoping. So if you want to reach out, say the website again.
It's the Nordic
The Nordic
Technologies.
Technologies.
Company.
And if you forget that, we're going to have it on the screen.
Okay.
But if you forget that, you can contact Dr. Malki at UTRGV. I'm sure there's a directory somewhere that they'll find you.
Sure.
They'll find you anyway. So
Right.
I know you probably didn't want me to say it, but they'll find you. So don't worry. Thank you, Dr. Malki, for
Thank
being
you.
here. Hopefully we'll have a follow-up on this and talk a little bit further about
Sure.
this technology.
Yes.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Dude, we're going to Mars.